very fortunate to have the great Pablo Batista with us today. You've probably heard him somewhere in concert with a long list of great artists. He's participated on Grammy Award-winning recordings. He's participated on a soundtrack that's won an Oscar. He's won numerous grants, a Pew Fellow, and he's toured all over the world. And right now, he's kind of back home at Temple University, man. Welcome back to Temple University.
My alma mater. That's right. Class of 85. That's right. Thank you for having me, Jay.
No, it's just truly a pleasure to have you here, man. So I want to get started, maybe with a bit of a little icebreaker, a few rapid fire questions coming at you. Sure. So, questions that I know you can handle.
Absolutely.
So the first question is, cheesesteaks or hoagies?
Cheesesteaks.
Is
I said
there
all low cheesesteaks, so it's like secret, like it's a secret. But I'm in Philly, man. Cheesesteaks, I got to go with the cheesesteak.
Yeah, is there a specific place? Do you?
I like this little spot in Mannion called Sorrentino's that I've been going to.
Okay.
And I also like Chubby's, which is not too far across the street from Los Angeles.
Right.
Oh, this is terrible.
So there's a little triangle.
Yeah, I'm going to put this in the back of my next record and say these are all my little favorite spots to eat at, But yeah, that's where I go.
Now, is there something, is it made a certain way? Is there peppers, onions?
Man, it's just like the rolls or amorosos. It's just fresh. It's Philly.
I got you.
It's clean, and I love the establishment, Sorrentino's. It's a mom and son establishment, and they've been there forever. It's underneath the trestle right in Manayunk, and they're just beautiful little people. It's a really small little spot, and it's just real clean, and it's just they've been one of my little spots I've been going to.
It's a vibe there.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
How about, is there a favorite Philly sports team?
Yeah, I'm an Eagles.
Okay.
Big time Eagles fan.
Okay.
Love football.
All right.
I played football in high school.
Did you?
Yes.
What position?
I was a defensive end, and I was a little guy, so I kept getting beat up pretty hard. And
you were scrappy.
I was scrappy, but I got my knee taken out one year. My junior year, I got clipped, and actually it was at a practice and I got a cheap shot right outside the knee, and it just tore my ACL, which ended. Yeah, listen, I didn't have much of a future as a football player anyway, so they were doing me a favor.
They just pointed you in the right direction.
But I was a scrappy little guy, and I loved football, and I still do, and I'm a huge Eagles fan.
Pablo Batista, defensive end. I like it.
Yeah, man. I like hitting things.
Yeah, it's apparent.
Not much has changed.
Is there, if you think about the 70s, that funk era, and, what was happening, Miles and Fusion and everything that was going on. Is there, maybe give me 4 or 5 bands from the 70s that stood out for you?
Well, I was born in 62, so you guys do the math. But, man, it was just such a great era of music, from jazz, big band, rock and roll, the Beatles. I was born in the middle of everything. In the Latin scene, we had like the whole Fania All-Stars, whole movement of all these amazing records that recorded underground. Like thousands and thousands of Latin records were being recorded, 60s, 70s, 80s. And then all of, whatever was going on in pop culture at the time as well. The Beatles, rock and roll, jazz, Buddy Rich, Count Basie.
Yeah.
I grew up with all of that stuff. I played in a jazz band in high school, so it really turned me on to big band stuff. I was always into Tito Puente, and I was always into Dizzy Gillespie and Chano Pozo.
There it is.
Manteca. I was raised in an era where music was just amazing and abundant and rich. R&B, Earth, Wind and Fire, War, Santana, Mandrill, the whole Fania All-Star thing, just Ray Barretto, Tito Puente. It was just everything, every AC/DC, Boston, everything, Miles.
And you were wide open to everything.
Yeah, man. Because back in the day, everybody had a percussionist. It was like kind of like the thing that was like the cool
horn
thing.
sections, percussions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like I said, man, I know I can work doing this because every style of music had, the beat, the Rolling Stones, "Sympathy for the Devil." Ooh, 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 ooh. Sympathy for the Devil. You know what I mean? I mean, when you got rock and roll stuff, and the clave was always really, let me go back to a little clave sound. Bo Diddley, ding ding boom boom, ba doom 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 doom. Percussion has been in music for so long. It was adapted, in New Orleans by Bo and all these people from these slaves that were working in the tobacco fields and cotton fields in New Orleans. There was a huge migration of Cubans that came over with the clave, and then they like, bam.
Well, I know you spent time in Cuba as well, and I want to come back to that in a little bit because you extensively did a lot of research and spent time there. Moving along with the list, favorite Tasty Cake product.
Oh man!
You have a song called Tasty Cake.
Yeah, it was written by Howard Britz and myself. I arranged it. Howard wrote it. Yeah, well, the interesting thing about this song and my music is that I fuse a lot of different rhythms together real fast. So it's almost like weaving a blanket or a quilt. I'll have this color, and then I'll put in another color, and then I'll put in another. So this particular song is interesting because it has the rhythm of wawanko, which is... infused with tumbao, the other rhythm. So what I did was, since the tune is moving so fast and it's open, I fused the two rhythms. So I'm actually playing, So I'm actually fusing the two and then speaking in between, and kind of grooving along with it, So it's a little more complicated than a typical salsa tune where you'll have more pocket. Ba 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 ba. My music is moving, and so I combine a lot of the different rhythms together, and that's the beauty behind Latin jazz. We're fusing all these different elements together.
I'm curious. Did you have the title in mind when you were creating that rhythm or bringing that rhythm into play, or was it after you were writing that, and playing around with that rhythm that you thought Tasty Cake? What kind of happened?
Well, I think the title came first, and then once I heard the melody, because it was written by Howard Britz, and then I arranged it. So I came up with the rhythm stuff. Listening to the melody that he wrote, I combined the rhythm because you have melody and you have rhythm, and they have to come. They have to go together. Mm-hmm. You're not gonna play a bolero. When he's so you have to be able to know how to arrange the song and be able to make it move. And so we came together. The melody was there. Then I attached the rhythm, and then fused all these other little elements in there. And so that's how we came up with Tasty Cake. But Philadelphia again.
Tastes good.
Man, I'm a crimpets guy.
Butterscotch or what? Jelly or?
It's a toss between. Jellies are hard to find, but I'm a butterscotch guy too.
Again, just heading back down to the extreme south in Cuba. Mm-hmm. You had a grant that helped facilitate you spending a significant amount of time there. If you can talk about that experience, and I know that's one of your favorite places.
Yeah.
Why is it one of your favorite places, and what does it mean to you?
Well, let me back up a little bit, Jay. So when I went to Temple, I I started teaching at an organization called AMLA, which is La Asociación de Músico Latinoamericano, which is in Spanish, which is the Association of Latin American Musicians.
And if you bring that up, I have to bring up Jesse Bermudez.
Jesse was the founder of it, and I was one of the young guys teaching, and we had a whole crew of cats, pioneer guys that had been in Philly since the 50s, playing Latin music and trying to get better wages. And Jesse was really responsible for establishing the association, as well as it became an institution for higher learning as well. So, I taught there for 17, 18 years. And as a teacher, it enabled me to, AMLA was my conduit to go study folklore and go to the source, and Cuba was always like the cradle of Afro-Cuban music or Latin music, because that's where, danzón comes from, changui, son, which is salsa, all the rumba folkloric rhythms, the bata rhythms from Yoruba, and the tribes from the Congo. It's all these different tribes that have come in, they've retained all these traditions. It was just a cradle for someone to study like myself. So I've always had that desire to do it as a child. Once I knew that this is what I wanted to do, that you had, that was a Mecca. You had to go to the Mecca for me. And so the Pennsylvania Council of the Arts helped facilitate that. As a teacher, I was able to go study with these masters that I've always dreamt of and heard on records. And then I would, come back study, come back teach, disseminate the information, try to incorporate it in my performances. And whatever genre I played, because I always end up, and this sometimes there's a fine line, but you don't, as a percussionist, you don't want to be, you have to always pay respects to the music no matter what it is. If you're playing R&B, you got to play R&B. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be a percussionist who is a Latin percussionist and everything that I play is mambo in every song. Because that doesn't work on, Mercy, that doesn't work on a Marvin Gaye. Mercy, Mercy Me, you have to know and study. And that's the difference that's why I've been able to continue my career, because I've studied the genres and I don't go into now when it's time to solo, I go into my bag of tricks.
Okay.
Go into the folklore, go into, the Afro-Cuban stuff and, polyrhythms and the solos around the polyrhythms and things that I've created. But, I really try to, and I've spent a lot of time studying great percussionists like Ralph McDonald, who was my mentor, the late Doc Gibbs from Philly, rest his soul. Just a lot of cats, Paulinho de Costa, who's Brazilian from LA, who's done a lot of recording sessions. I took the time and years and years and years, and there's a bunch of great artists, Don Elias, and there's so many great ones. But then I also studied the real folkloric guys, the salseros like Ray Barreto, Mongo Santa Maria, and the Candido, the going back to Chano Pozo, who wrote Manteca with Dizzy Gillespie. I did all that research going back there as well, and going back to Puerto Rico as well, and just taking the time to study all these different nuances of all the different grooves, and then coming up in Philly. Coming to Temple, born and raised in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, coming to Philadelphia, going to Temple, when you're in Philly, there was the whole Philly sound and Grover and Patty and more so recent Jill Scott and stuff. But before that, the sound of Philadelphia, and it was a cool percussionist. Cats don't mention him too often. I always mention him because, I'm from Philly and it's important. But a guy named Larry Washington, who just, had very 2 or 3 little simple grooves, but they were the most recognizable grooves in the world. I love music. You know what I mean? As simple as it is, it's one of the most played songs in the world.
Sure.
You go any airport in the world, you're gonna hear that song. So, and that Larry was from, I guess Camden, Jersey, but he recorded the Philly sound. So I took the time to study the musicians, the different styles, the everything. I took the time to really, and that's why I'm able to assimilate in a bunch of different situations, from rock to smooth jazz to Latin, hardcore Latin jazz, and
Yeah, well, you've put in the time. I mean, you've mentioned, Patty and Grover and Phyllis Hyman,
yes,
right on up to, we mentioned Alicia Keys and her and, so many others that you've had the opportunity to perform with, to work with. But, you bring up a really interesting point of, finding your way to be the chameleon, to fit in, as opposed to dominate, with your sound, to bring the sound to what, they need, what they're looking for. And I'm sure that has led to many additional gigs because you've been able to, play that role, adapt that, to their situation.
study. It's studying. It's all about studying. Coming from Temple, studying the style, studying what to do when, transitions. Because a lot of times music doesn't even have percussion in it. Alicia Keys stuff, to be honest with you, didn't have much percussion. She kept me around for 13 years because of, how I integrated myself and my sounds in the show, the transitions between scenes and songs, and the dynamics of building up things and making things. Oh, we're gonna go, and then she was the type of artist she liked, like you said, let's flip it, let's do this, let's play. This is reggae. This is swing. Let's just like she always kept flipping things, and I was always able to help facilitate in that type of change.
That's beautiful. Now, what was that time like at Temple, man? You were telling me the other day living on Diamond Street, and what was that experience like, man? And coming from Bethlehem, to Philadelphia, to Temple, adapting, acclimating to the city, for a young Pablo Batista, the ex-defensive end. What was that experience like?
That's the way it was. It was like I opened the door, I walked in, and it was like, here I am in Philly. Went right to the dorms. I remember the first, oh my God, I remember this like it was yesterday. I moved into the dorms, I was petrified. I think it was a Friday. It was pitch dark, pouring, raining, loading into my dorm from Bethlehem, and my first experience in college, moving away from home, it was devastating. I was petrified, and it's like, oh my God, what did I get myself into here? I really just wanted to play music. But as a result of being in Philadelphia, I ran into William Keyes at the Urban Coalition, on a summer job, and he was a friend of Mr. Walt Reeder, who was Gene Carnes' manager, and at the time Gene Carnes was doing a record that Grover Washington Jr. was producing, Closer Than Close, and so working my summer job, I gave Mr. Keyes a little demo. He's like, he's kind of trying to figure me out, this young little scrappy Puerto Rican kid working the Urban Coalition doing, I don't even remember what I was doing, but anyway, I gave him a little demo tape that I did at Temple, and he's like, wow, this is really great. So he gave it to Walt Reeder, and Walt Reeder said, this is great. Gave it to Grover. Grover said, this is great. So he called me, and I tell the story a lot, but I was broke. I didn't have any money. I was in the dorms at Johnson Hall, so I borrowed money and to get to the studio. And mind you, my gear was a little raggedy at the time, a couple congas, not much gear. And I borrowed a few dollars. I took a cab out there to Alpha Studios, which was by Penrose Diner, South Philadelphia, pretty far out. Set up my stuff. Grover was there. I can't believe I'm meeting Grover Washington Jr. He just won the Grammy for Wine Light. This is Grover, the biggest, and sweetest man in the world. I loved him dearly. And I played for him. He said, man, you sound great, kid. Come back tomorrow. So I was like,
I got to get cab money again. No, that's amazing.
That's how it started.
Amazing.
And then, he had 2 weeks of work, one at the Blue Note and one at Blues Alley. He took me immediately. After I did the session, I went right to the Blue Note, and we killed it. And then we went to Blues Alley for another 7 days. It was 14 days of straight work, and I was a young kid coming out of Temple. So, it was just, for me, it was just, University of Grover Washington Jr.
Strap on for the ride.
Yeah, man. And I studied all the stuff that was on the records. Who
else was in the band when you joined?
Wow, there was a whole bunch of guys. Tyrone Brown,
The great Tyrone Brown.
Sid
Roach
Simmons.
Sid. Like
Yeah,
Sid,
and then
okay.
there was a bunch of drummers. Grover's brother. Oh gosh, jeez, I forgot Grover's brother's name. I'm sorry, but Grover's brother was playing. Daryl. Daryl was playing drums. And then later on, there was a bunch of different configurations because once I started, I was there. So like there was a bunch of different guys. That, not a lot, but Gerald Vesey came through, and then Bill Jolly came through eventually, and then Donald Robinson, Adam Holzman on keyboards. We played with Miles. Kern, bass player from Detroit, played bass for a while. Stephen Wolf on drums a while. Richie Morales on drums, who played with Spyro Gyro, was there for a while. Wilby Fletcher was there for a little short stint. I mean, I was there for so long that I, pretty much seen a bunch of guys.
A lot of guys come and go.
Yeah.
It's a great ride. That's a great ride.
What a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Truly blessed.
You have this trio of conga in front of you. You've got the bongos
Bongo,
over there.
Yeah,
you actually have a tom-tom, and then you have some percussion instruments. You were telling me a little history of the German, the instrument with the
Guido.
The Guido.
The Guido. And the thing about especially like in merengue, it was brought over by the Germans to Santo Domingo, which was a cheese grater. This is more the plant used more in cha-cha-cha in Cuba for charanga music. So little supplemental instruments that go along with the congas are part of the whole Latin percussion family. So I just wanted to, bring a couple instruments and demonstrate, the Guido again was, introduced in charanga or cha-cha-cha. Enrique Orin, one of the founders of cha-cha-cha, they kind of combined put a mambo into danzón music, which was a very European formal classical music. And when they put the mambo in, they incorporated the section called the mambo, and it kind of combined the races of the drummers and the elite musicians, and it created this whole genre of cha-cha-cha and charanga, which is basically the steps that the dance makes, cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha. And then another instrument that was used in the beginnings of Latin music was the basic maracas, and it was used in changui, which is a music from Guantanamo in Cuba, where we have our military base, but there's a style called changui, and they played it with a tres, bongo, maracas, and marimbula, which was considered their bass back then. And it was simple, just ding 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 ding. Just basic pattern, but then it evolved into playing more triplet feel for salsa music. And so, as opposed to having a drum set player that plays hi-hats, snare drum, kick drum, we all have our separate instruments. One guy will play the maraca, one guy will play the conga. One guy will play the bongo. And then a form that I mentioned earlier, changui, which is a real ancient style of music, very, very synonymous with Guantanamo, is, they played bongo, but different. They're different. They were bigger. They would pour water in to get this really low tuning, and they would play a lot in 3/4. And then they would, use a bunch of different instruments, like when they would play compasa or compasa, which is the conga rhythm, the carnival rhythm. Low jump play. So, there was a bunch of different incorporations of different styles of drums, and then the conga would play. So, what I do is I learn the roots of all these different instruments, and I try to incorporate them, and how do I incorporate them in all these styles of music, and that's, the research that goes behind buying records and studying and
Oh yeah,
grinding,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And going to see players and studying as much as you can and traveling to see how they do things in different countries. So one of the things that led me to where I'm at as well is having the opportunity to have worked with Grover, and becoming a multi-instrumentalist, a percussionist, not just a conga player or not just a bongo player or not just a timbale player. I had to learn all the different instruments and be able to incorporate, because people are not going to hire 5 guys to play percussion.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to play one guy that can play all this stuff. And you got to be able to come correct and be able to come play sounds, especially if you're playing pop music or jazz or funk or anything a lot of things that aren't Latin oriented. So as a result of working with Grover, I remember in the mid '80s when I started working with Grover, he was starting to experiment really heavily with electronics and the Fairlight and all these like modern computer programs to record. And so he recorded another version of Take 5. And it had all these different sounds. It had chimes, it had like breaking glass, it had claps, it had these, 808 sounds. How was I going to perform them live? We didn't have a clap, we didn't have nothing. We had, these don't sound like this. Or how do you recreate this? You're not going to hear this live. You see what I'm saying? So by working with Grover and having been forced to come up with the sounds that were on Take 5, it forced me to try to find other sounds and try to incorporate them. And at the time, there was this company, Roland. So I had bought this pad, which had no sounds in it, but you had to buy a drum machine. And the drum machine had the sounds. So the people started doing a lot of programming, especially hip-hop and rap and the beginning of the whole era of programming. They were using drum machines. So I incorporated those sounds and I connected them to the pad. It was an octapad, which I still have, which no sounds. And then you had to program the MIDI note number to the pad. So I can get the sounds that are on the machine on the pad. And it enabled me to layer sounds. Like this sound right here is actually sleigh bells and a tambourine together. It's 2 sounds. So it enabled you to layer sounds and put things and play things fast that, look, I can play this, or which is this. It takes 2 hands to do this. Well, it doesn't take me 2 hands. Which takes 2 hands to play clave.
So that's that creative energy at work again.
It in Take 5 pushed me to that level of starting to program things. And then as I got deeper into it and doing more pop gigs, I was able to incorporate all the sounds that are on the record. There's claps. You know what that is, right?
Oh yeah.
Car wash all day.
Uh-huh.
So like, and a bell tree, just simple. You have to have the bell tree's a skinny bell tree with a tiny little metal ball that you have to hit zing perfectly to get. You know what I'm saying? So all these instruments, I was able to play acoustically in my studio and record them. And through technology, I'm able to even able to play bongo. When you play bongo acoustic, you need 2 hands. When I'm playing R&B tracks, Tina Marie tune or whatever, I got to be able to play bongo, but I got to be able to play And so I've taken the time to even just. Which is this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all these different,
all introduced to the past.
Yeah, man. And even timbales, where, like sometimes I have to do timbale fills and play congas at the same time. And even I put in acoustic, this bata drum that I'm into, folkloric Yoruba. So I have like all these things that I've been programming years and years and years and years, and just working with them in my studio, coming up with different grooves, even utilizing congas with the drum set, and just doing more modern stuff, like a group called Osain de Monte. They'll play with a cajon, and then you have that like. Sorry. You know what I mean?
That's amazing.
Yeah, creating.
That is amazing.
And then, I put the clave on my foot and play all that, you know. But all these sounds, even, when you need an explosion, or you need a gunshot, or, Phyllis Hyman track, Living All Alone, to play acoustic triangles with the beater and then be able to play, these sounds in addition to that. It's, it's almost impossible. So you have to be able to incorporate both acoustic and electronic, and that's what I do. I try to make the music seamless. Another one, this is a sound, a bank that I created for Grover. Let It Flow. Doom doom ba doom boom.
Yeah, classic.
Boom ba doom doom. Doom ba doom boom. Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding. You see, these sounds acoustically, you play them. If you're not mic'd up perfectly, when have a mic right on them, and you're playing live, and you're playing chimes and all this stuff, and then try to play the bell, and shakers and tap, it's acoustically, it doesn't translate all, in terms of volume a lot of times. So by me being able to do things both acoustically and electronically, it gives the audience
the full experience.
The experience that you're going to hear more from the record, versus live, like you'll hear the record, it's like, oh man, you hear all this beautiful, but you hear them live, and then you're missing, or any of that other little stuff that just fills the puzzle in. So that's what I do, man.
And you do it well, and you've been doing it for quite some time, and we appreciate you, man. We love you for what you do.
And I even got animals.
See,
I bring my farm animals with me.
Come on, man. So wait a minute. When do you pull those out? What songs might someone hear those on?
I actually used it when I wrote an opera. I wrote El Viaje, an opera I wrote as a part of a grant that I run from Pew, and I had a scene in the opera where there was a farm, in the village, and I think I lost it. I had chickens in the beginning, and then, then it started raining, The horses got a little freaked out, and then,
So you've got the world at your fingertips, basically, there,
well,
man.
Man, I'm just, this is what I do.
I want to take a second and thank you so much for sharing with us today, man. It's truly a pleasure, honor, and privilege.
It was an honor to be with you. I have so much admiration and respect for you, and the whole institution of Temple and the whole RTI. It's been, part of my life since I moved to Philadelphia back in 1981. So, this is home for me, and I feel real proud and humbled to be here and invited by you, and I'm grateful, and I'm super proud to be part of the program.
It's great to have you, and again, man, much respect and thank you. I think you're an inspiration to so many folks, man. As I told you the other day, you're a role model. A lot of folks don't want to accept that, but whether you do or not, you are, man. And it means a lot to have you here. And again, thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you. Then stay tuned for some more because this is halftime. Grover always said this is only halftime, so let's do it.